Hi everyone, it's me, John Whaite, and I'm so happy to be back on the Waitrose channel. The nights are drawing in, and at this time of year, whether you're plonked on the couch or a little gathering with your mates, something to tear and share is definitely on the menu. So my cheesy tear and share bread is perfect. It's got roasted garlic in there, chives, salad onions, and 3 different types of cheese. It's perfect. And if you want the full recipe, the link of course is down in the video description. I'm going to start off by making the dough, and before I make the dough I need to warm the ingredients ever so slightly, just the liquid ingredients. So in my pan I've got my milk, my water and my butter, and I just need to heat that up just until it's lukewarm. And a good indicator is as the butter just starts to melt, it's ready. There shouldn't be any bubbles and there should be pretty much no steam either. That's good to go. It's a bread dough, so I'm going to need bread flour. So I'm going to use half strong white bread flour because this has got the gluten in there, higher protein content, which will mean the dough is elastic and strong, and half plain flour. And that's just going to make sure the dough is really, really supple and tender and so cakey when you bite into it. 2 teaspoons of salt. 1, 2. And then I want a little bit of instant or fast action yeast. That'll do. And then with my hand, I'm just going to blend those together just to get everything well mixed into the flour. And then to that, I'm going to add 1 large egg, along with those lukewarm liquids and butter. And don't worry that the butter hasn't fully melted. It's going to get a very brutal kneading now, and that will soften the butter for sure. So what I like to do first, before I put it on my machine, mix it first by hand, holding that dough hook, so that when I put it on the machine and turn it on, the flour will explode all over the kitchen. Okay, onto the machine. And I'm going to knead that on a medium-high speed for about 5-10 minutes until it's lovely and soft and supple and a perfect dough. And if you like the look of this recipe, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That's looking good to me. So my dough is lovely and soft and stretchy, as you can see. So I'm going to transfer this to an oiled bowl, cover that with a plate, and I'm going to let that rise. It could take an hour, it could take 2, depends on how warm your house is, but I want that to kind of double, if not slightly more, in volume. And once it has, I can finish my buns. Right, my dough is proved, it's swollen up massively so I can make that gorgeous cheesy, garlicky, buttery filling. So I've got here some butter, which I've just made sure is lovely and soft. Keep it out of the fridge for a good hour or so before you want to make this. And then to that I'm going to add a few little bits and bobs. So I've got some lovely chives here. And I'm going to slice those as finely as I can manage. There's always a stubborn chive that kind of escapes the pack. Get back! So I'm going to pop the chopped chives in with my softened butter. And then to really amp up the oniony joy, I'm going to finally chop up some washed salad onions as well. You wouldn't think a salad onion could do this to a grown man. I just love cooking so much. In they go. Oh, at least we know my tear ducts are working. So to remind myself, in here I've got my butter, my salad onions, the chives, and what I'm going to add to that now is some roasted garlic. When the oven was on last night when I was cooking dinner, I wrapped a piece of garlic, took the head off a little bit, wrapped it in foil and roasted it in the oven for about 35-40 minutes. And what you get is a really sweet and squidgy garlic. So I'm going to put this, the whole thing, into the butter. It's that roasting that makes it really tender in flavour. And it goes really well in everything. It really changes the flavour of garlic in a good way. You can use up to 3. If you like it super garlicky, then 3 heads would be gorgeous. And don't forget it's roasted, so it isn't that kind of pungent, acrid garlic you might be used to. It's sweet. It still has a kick though. And if you fancy getting very jazzy, Waitrose now sell black garlic paste. So you could use black garlic paste instead of roasted garlic. And then I'm going to finish that with a pinch of sea salt flakes and a little bit of white pepper as well. Bit stronger white pepper. And all I need to do then is just give this a good mix to get the butter nice and soft and just to distribute all of that flavour and filling. Oh, that pepper is so strong, it's beautiful. Okay, so my garlicky, chive-y, salady onion butter is ready. I've got my dough proved, I've got my 3 cheeses already grated. That's mozzarella, parmesan and cheddar. You can buy them ready grated or you can grate and tear them up yourself. And all I need to do now is roll out that dough and assemble the whole thing. So I'm going to move this chopping board out of the way. I've got my pre-greased baking tin. So I'm going to flour the worktop, flour the dough. And I'm going to roll this out into a square of roughly 45 centimetres, but don't worry too much. As long as you can roll it back up and get 12 buns out of it, you're good to go. What I find really helpful is, as I go, just to keep flouring, and most importantly, just make sure that it's not sticking to the worktop, because if it does, when I come to roll my buns up, it'll be a real nightmare. So just keep it moving. And a top tip for you, if you want to make the dough in advance, you can do, and then pop it in the fridge for a few hours, and it'll be even easier to roll if it's a bit cold. So if you struggle with rolling bread dough out, chill it in the fridge a little bit and show it who's boss. Right, my dough is rolled into a shape with 4 edges. Whether it's a square or a rectangle, I cannot tell, but it looks good. And all I'm going to do is get that very beautiful, soft, strong chive, onion, garlic butter, and I'm going to plonk that onto the dough. And it's quite important that this butter is lovely and soft. So if you live in quite a cold house, you might want to just pop it in the microwave just for 10-15 second bursts, just to make sure it's spreadable. So spread this in a thin layer onto that piece of dough. Oh my gosh, it smells incredible, is how this smells. And don't get lazy and think, oh, I'm not going to roast the garlic, I'll just grate it. If you roast that garlic, the flavour is unmatched, it really is special. So you can see I'm spreading that out on the entire piece of dough in a nice thin layer. I'm then going to take most of the cheese, apart from a handful, and scatter that all over the dough. Now in here I've got mozzarella, I've got parmesan, and I've got cheddar. And I find that that is the perfect trio of cheeses, because with every bite you get a slightly different flavour. You get that lovely creaminess from the mozzarella, you get the sharp kind of umami tang from the parmesan, and then that cheddar, that mature cheddar, has a bit of a kick, doesn't it? If there was if a Wigan was a piece of cheese, it'd be cheddar. Right, I'm going to save a little bit of the cheese just to scatter on top of the buns before they bake, for a bit of melty goodness. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to roll it up in a tight spiral. What I like to do is just kind of tug it towards me first, and then roll it, and that way you know it's nice and tight and you'll get a great spiral all the way through the dough. So start at one end, tug it towards you and roll, tug it and roll, tug and roll, tug and roll. Sounds like a TikTok dance, doesn't it? Tug and roll. What I like to try and do is just join that seam up. So with brute force, pinch that seam all the way along and just try and shape it into a fairly even sausage of dough like that. I'm going to put a little bit of flour just underneath the dough, just so that I can easily cut it. And of course I could cut this into 12 spirals with a knife. That would work perfectly well. The only problem there is that the knife would squash the spirals a little bit, and I want that tight spiral to be not perfect, nothing in life is perfect, but as good as I can. So to do that, I use dental floss. It's clean, it's unflavoured, it's unused, and it works really well. You could use thread as well. I'm going to slide the dental floss underneath my dough, which is why I've put the flour under there. And when it's about halfway along the length of the dough, bring the lengths of floss up and over the dough, cross them, and then with a good tug, cut it. That'll keep that beautiful spiral in the dough intact. So I've got 2 halves of my dough sausage. I'm going to chop each half in half to give me 4 quarters of dough. And then each quarter of dough I can slice into 3 to make a total of 12, if my maths is correct, cheesy buns. Oh. Beautiful. So I've got my 12 pretty perfect, if I may say so myself, spirals of dough. And I'm going to pop them into a greased baking tray. What is a bit important here is that your baking tray's got fairly deep sides because you want to contain the dough spirals and make a more tear and share kind of loaf. So I'm going to do 4 lines of 3, and I'm going to leave a little bit of space in between because these will of course swell up. 'Tis the nature of a yeasted dough. So 4 lines of 3 spirals of dough. And I can't bake these yet because I need them to prove again. So I'm going to cover these with a clean tea towel, leave them for between 45 minutes and an hour, and once they're swollen and wobbly and jiggly and ready for the oven, I can then bake my cheesy buns. See you in a bit, guys. Right, these hopefully have puffed up. Let's have a look. Oh, they have. Phew! The recipe works. So what I'm going to do now is just glaze these with an egg. You don't have to do this, but it gives them a much darker, richer colour, and also it helps the cheese stick to the bun. So I'm going to glaze all over the buns with the egg, just roughly beaten. And don't be too pedantic about this, just whack it on and spread it around. What I love about this is obviously it's a soft, pillowy white bread that you can just sink your teeth into when you need some comfort food. But also that combination of cheese and onion and garlic is just one of the best combinations in the world. And the fact that it's kind of tear and share adds a little bit of fun to the whole thing as well. So the egg glaze is on. I'm going to just finish these with an extra little bit of those 3 cheeses. If you've got cheese leftovers, you might not know this, but you can actually freeze it. Freeze it and save it for a later date. You can grate it and freeze it, or just wrap it up as a block and freeze it as well. Right, the egg glaze is on. The scattering of cheese is scattered. All that I need to do now is bake these and wait impatiently to sink my teeth into one. Right, I mean, come on. Get a little bit closer and have a look at that. You've got that gorgeous layer of molten cheese, you've got the golden crust, and the smell is intoxicating. It's filled the entire house, no, the neighborhood, with a beautiful garlicky, cheesy scent. I cannot wait to dig into these, and I really, really hope that you've enjoyed this video and that you enjoy making these buns. I'll let them cool down and then I'll dig in. Now, I'm gonna be back very soon on the Waitrose channel, but until then, happy baking.